All right, so buckle up, because today we're diving deep into the world of Ted Kaczynski.
UNABOMBER.
Exactly, the UNABOMBER.
Yeah.
And you guys gave us a pretty wild mix of sources this time.
Yeah.
Got the Wikipedia page, obviously got to start there. An episode of FBI Files, those are always intense. And even
An essay, a whole essay asking, was the UNABOMBER right?
like straight up question mark. It's provocative to say the least. So before we get into any of that,
Yeah, good point.
what's our mission here? We're not here to glorify violence, obviously.
Of course not.
But to try and understand, how does a math genius, a literal genius,
It's true.
become a terrorist?
Yeah.
And the even trickier part are A, why his ideas, particularly about technology,
Relevant today.
Yeah, especially today. Like, does any of it hold up?
It's a question that just keeps getting more and more relevant as we, I don't know, rely on technology more and more.
Yeah, it's inescapable at this point.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes Kaczynski so fascinating. He's not easily categorized. He's this incredibly complex figure.
Right.
And to really understand him, we need to, go way back. Start with his early life and see how that, led him down this path.
So Wikipedia paints this picture of young Ted as, like, the textbook child prodigy growing up in Chicago, IQ of 167.
That's wow.
That's top, like, 0.00001%.
Seriously.
And then Harvard at 15. I mean, most kids are barely starting high school.
Yeah.
But this isn't just, like, trivia, right? This really lays the foundation for his sense of being different.
Of being exceptional.
Of being exceptional, yeah.
And that isolation, even with all the success,
Right.
that's key.
So then there's the Harvard study he gets roped into, led by this guy, Henry Murray.
This is where things get dark.
This is where things get
Pretty disturbing.
disturbing. Yeah, the sources don't hold back on how messed up this was.
Not really a typical psych experiment.
No. Students writing essays bearing their souls, their deepest beliefs.
Only to have those same beliefs weaponized against them in these staged
Oh, it's awful.
aggressive debates. Like, imagine the impact, especially on someone already as introverted as Kaczynski.
You got to wonder if that planted some seeds of distrust, right?
Oh, yeah. In institutions, in authority.
Exactly. And from Harvard, it's off to, was it Michigan?
University of Michigan for grad school.
For grad school, right. So more academic success, but that isolation, it just keeps...
It intensifies.
It intensifies.
Yeah.
And there's even this anecdote about Kaczynski briefly considering gender transition. And according to the sources, this sparks, like, intense rage in him.
Oh.
It feels like, I don't know, a turning point, right?
Yeah.
From purely intellectual stuff to something much more...
Volatile even.
Yeah, volatile, exactly.
It's like this period of intense inner conflict, right? A struggle for identity that just happens to coincide with all this growing alienation he's feeling.
Even brilliance doesn't protect you from those very human experiences, huh?
It doesn't shield you from them, no.
No. And then comes Berkeley, the youngest professor they'd ever had at, what, 25?
I think so. Something like that. It was unheard of.
But surprise, surprise.
He couldn't connect with students.
He couldn't connect with the students.
Nope.
So that pattern, that brilliance, clashing with expectations.
Keeps repeating.
Keeps repeating. And finally, the move that cements his image as this recluse.
The Montana cabin.
The Montana cabin. No electricity, no running water. Talk about off the grid.
Talk about it. Totally off the grid.
Right, and that's how most people picture him. Right. But the sources are careful to point out that Kaczynski wasn't just some, I don't know, crazy hermit.
Right.
He had genuine skills.
Yeah.
Gardening, hunting, living off the land.
Self-sufficiency, like for real.
Yeah, like real deal self-sufficiency.
So it was a deliberate choice, right?
It's almost like a competency that you almost have to admire a little bit.
Yeah. Living by his principles, no matter how extreme they became.
Which, of course, brings us to, the darkest chapter. The start of the bombings.
Yeah.
1978, that first one targeting a professor.
Northwestern University.
Northwestern University, right?
Yeah.
The FBI Files episode, it lays out how it all started. Small, almost amateurish.
But it's the escalation, right? That's what's so chilling.
That's what's chilling is the escalation over time. The meticulous construction, those wooden boxes, the FC signature, Freedom Club.
He was learning, refining his methods with each attack.
Like he was getting better at it. And
Yeah.
that's what makes it so...
disturbing, because this wasn't just lashing out. There was a calculated intent there.
To cause fear.
To inflict pain. It raises the question of what drives someone to not only commit these acts, but to actually want to get better at them.
We'll get to those motivations for sure, but first we got to talk about the document that really thrust Kaczynski and his, I guess you call it,
Anti-technology ideology.
yeah, anti-technology ideology into the spotlight. The Manifesto, Industrial Society, and Its Future. 35,000 words.
This wasn't just a rant.
No, this was a carefully constructed
Argument.
Like, even if you hate what he did, you got to admit.
The guy could write.
The guy could write. So in those pages, we start to see his whole critique of technology taking shape. He argues that technology, instead of liberating us,
is a disaster.
Yeah.
For the human race.
Yeah, a disaster for the human race,
Darn.
leading to feelings of powerlessness, a loss of meaning. He saw modern life as filled with what he called, what was it?
Surrogate activities. Work, entertainment, politics, stuff that keeps us busy but doesn't really provide any true
Fulfillment.
fulfillment.
Right. And what's really striking is how some of his ideas resonate so much with like the anxieties we have today. He was writing in the 90s, but his fears about technology controlling us, eroding freedom.
It's almost prophetic.
Yeah, it's like he was ahead of his time. And the Waterfalthist video, they make a pretty good case for him being like
a prophet of the digital age. Like, for real.
Yeah. So agree or disagree with his conclusions?
It's hard to deny that he tapped into something real, a deep unease about where society was heading.
An unease that hasn't gone away.
Not at all. In fact, it's probably gotten worse.
Probably gotten worse. But let's shift gears for a sec. Talk about the investigation itself. Because the FBI...
No, they were stumped.
Stumped for years. Spent millions chasing dead ends. The Waterfalthist video, they point out how Kaczynski, he outsmarted them at every turn.
Using his intellect to evade the very system he was rebelling against.
Ironic, right?
Total irony. So how do you catch someone this smart?
Well, that's where things take a really interesting turn.
Right, the turning point.
Kaczynski makes a demand. Publish his manifesto in a major newspaper. The bombings stop.
The bombing stopped.
It's not your typical terrorist behavior.
Not at all. Like, it suggests he wasn't just driven by destruction.
He wanted his ideas, no matter how warped they were, to be taken seriously.
Heard.
Yeah, heard.
And tragically, it's his own brother, David, who recognizes the writing style in the published manifesto.
And contacts the FBI.
It's such a relief that the bombing stopped, but also...
Heartbreaking. A brother betraying his brother.
A family forever marked by this.
By the shadow of the UNABOMBER. Yeah. So that brings us to Kaczynski's capture and trial, a period that is full of its own complexities.
Because he refused to plead insanity.
He refused to plead insanity. He wanted his ideas, however warped,
to be judged on their merits, not
Yeah.
dismissed as the ravings of a madman.
Right, right. And that, of course, just fuels the debate. Was he actually schizophrenic, as some diagnosed, or just a...
A radical thinker, a dangerous one, but sane nonetheless.
Yeah. But before we unpack all of that, let's just pause for a second.
Take a breath.
We've covered a lot, right? From this brilliant but isolated childhood to this chilling escalation of violence
And a manifesto that, frankly.
that continues to provoke debate. It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a story that defies easy answers, you know? A reminder that human nature is
Complicated.
more than complicated, that brilliance and darkness can exist in the same individual.
Absolutely. So in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to go even deeper into Kaczynski's philosophy, the heart of his arguments, and really try to figure out.
If his critique of technology actually holds up under scrutiny.
Buckle up. Okay, so we've seen how Kaczynski's life kind of shaped his worldview, but to really get his radical ideas, we got to go to the source, right?
The manifesto itself.
The manifesto. Industrial Society and Its Future. Not exactly a bead treat.
No, it's dense.
Dense. But it's crucial to understanding his motivations.
Absolutely. And it's more than just, like, a rant, you know? He lays out his arguments, like, meticulously, builds a case against what he saw as the ills of technological progress.
And one of the core ideas, I think, is this concept of the power process.
Yeah.
Can you break that down a bit? What did he even mean by that, and why was it so central to his whole, like, philosophy?
So the power process, in a nutshell, is his term for what he believed to be this innate human need to have control over our lives, our environment. Like, we all have this drive, he argued, to exert autonomy, to feel a sense of agency in the world.
Okay, so we all crave some level of control. That makes sense. But how does technology mess with that? Where does it go wrong, according to Kaczynski?
So he believed that modern industrial society, with its emphasis on technology, efficiency, it systematically undermines this power process. It creates a world where we become more and more dependent on these complex systems
No, we don't understand.
that we don't understand, can't control.
So instead of empowering us, technology is actually making us more powerless.
Exactly. And this dependence, he argued, it leads to frustration, meaninglessness, lack of purpose. We become cogs in the machine instead of the masters of our own destiny, so to speak.
And he had a term for this, right? Surrogate activities.
Yes, surrogate activities, the things we do to fill that void. Work, entertainment, even political activism. It keeps us busy. We might even feel productive, but it's all just a distraction from our deeper need for autonomy.
So he's not saying that work or entertainment are bad in themselves,
Not necessarily.
but that they become problematic when they're used to kind of mask this deeper sense of powerlessness.
Right. We've become so used to this lack of control, this dependence on systems beyond our comprehension, that we don't even recognize it as a problem anymore.
We're sleepwalking into this future where technology just dictates our lives, and we're too busy, too distracted to even notice.
Basically, that was his warning.
It's pretty bleak.
Yeah.
But he wasn't just criticizing the technology itself, right? It was also our psychological adaptation to these systems.
Oh, absolutely. He argued that we've been conditioned to value comfort, security over freedom, autonomy. We're so focused on convenience, efficiency, entertainment that we've lost sight of what really matters. Our ability to shape our own lives, our own destinies, to have real agency.
And he even predicted, right, that this trend toward increasing technological control, it would lead to disaster, like societal collapse or some dystopian future where
We're basically enslaved by machines.
enslaved by machines. It's heavy stuff.
It is, but we got to remember the context too, right? He's writing in the aftermath of the Cold War, a time of high anxiety about nuclear annihilation, rapid technological advance. He was tapping into something very real.
So maybe he was a bit extreme in his conclusions.
Maybe.
But he was picking up on some genuine concerns.
That were bubbling under the surface, and that haven't gone away, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. He was writing decades ago.
Decades.
And how much of his critique, it just reams even truer today. I mean, we live in a world where technology is
even more pervasive.
more pervasive, yeah. Our lives are increasingly mediated by algorithms, artificial intelligence. Think about how much we rely on our smartphones, on social media, on being constantly connected.
But always on.
Are we really in control of our technology, or is it starting to
Control us.
control us? It's a valid question.
Kaczynski would say we're already on that slippery slope. He pointed to things like genetic engineering, surveillance technologies, the automation of labor.
As evidence that
That technology was becoming more and more capable of shaping, controlling human behavior.
and not just physical control,
No, psychological manipulation too.
the ways technology can influence our thoughts, emotions, desires. He saw advertising, propaganda, even entertainment as tools to mold us into
Compliant consumers.
passive spectators in our own lives. And let's be honest, some of what he warned about, it's happening right now.
Oh, yeah. The rise of these algorithms that curate our news feeds.
Yeah.
Targeted advertising that exploits our personal data.
The addictive nature of video games, streaming services that just keep us hooked for hours.
The attention economy, he saw that coming.
He did. And it's easy to dismiss Kaczynski as a madman, a lone wolf driven to violence. But when you really dig into the manifesto, you can't help but wonder, was he onto something? Did he see something in our relationship with technology that most of us were just too blind to see?
It's a question worth asking ourselves, even if we reject his call for revolution.
Violent revolution.
Yeah. Violent revolution, his critique, it forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our own lives, our own complicity in this system. Are we sacrificing our freedom, our autonomy, our very humanity in exchange for
Comfort, convenience, entertainment.
Exactly. Tough questions.
Tough questions. And it's easy to get, I don't know, a little freaked out about all this. But before we totally spiral into techno-dystopian panic, I think we need to step back and consider some counter-arguments, right?
Yeah, because as thought-provoking as his critique is, it's not without flaws.
Right. We got to look at both sides of the coin here. So in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to do just that. Examine those counter-arguments and try to answer the big question, the question that started it all. was the UNABOMBER right? Okay, so we've definitely spent a lot of time exploring Kaczynski's like dark vision of technology. But, as
Maybe
promised,
take the other side, right?
the other side, see if there's, another way to look at this. Because as compelling as his critique is,
It's important to remember he kind of painted with broad strokes, right?
right, condemned all technology, like
Hmm.
as if it was all inherently evil.
Yeah,
Didn't really consider the benefits. Even the What a Falthus video, which is pretty sympathetic to some of his stuff,
right.
admits that tech can be a force for good.
Absolutely. I mean, healthcare, connecting people across the world, raising awareness about the environment, which
Which
ironically,
he cared about.
yeah, he cared about the environment deeply.
It's ironic, right? He used the postal system to deliver his bombs. That's technology, a pretty amazing one.
Exactly. And his manifesto got published, reached a huge audience thanks to, the printing press, mass media.
You can't escape it.
It highlights the contradiction. Using the tools he condemned,
Right.
it shows that technology itself isn't good or evil. It's how we use it, right?
Yeah.
That's what matters.
So maybe the problem isn't technology, but like the way it's shaping our values, our behaviors.
Mm.
Have we gotten too obsessed with efficiency, productivity?
At the expense of community, connection, purpose.
Yeah, the things that actually make life meaningful, right?
Maybe that was Kaczynski's real target. Not the tech itself, but the ideology behind it.
Ideology.
Mm.
The one that prioritizes profit and progress.
Over people and the planet.
And that's tied to those systems of power he was so against.
The systems that benefit the few, while the rest of us feel powerless.
Right, like trapped. So maybe the question isn't was the Unabomber right, but more like,
How do we create a more humane, sustainable relationship with technology?
yeah, that's the question. How do we use it to empower people, build community, protect the environment, not, destroy those things?
Big questions.
Big questions. And speaking of unexpected twists,
Right.
what he falthist, they brought up this really interesting idea
Yeah.
that the internet, the very thing Kaczynski saw as like leading to dystopia,
Might actually hold the key to a better future.
almost like the antidote,
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Kaczynski couldn't have predicted how the internet would
decentralized power.
empower individuals, foster connections in ways he never imagined.
It's like we see it happening already, right? Online
The
communities
sharing of information.
bypassing those traditional gatekeepers.
The internet, if we use it wisely, could solve the very problems Kaczynski was so worried about.
Isolation.
Alienation, the loss of agency.
It's almost poetic.
Right.
The thing he feared most.
The path to a better world.
So where does that leave us? What can we take away from all this? I think it's a call to action. To be more mindful, more deliberate about how we engage with technology.
We got to reclaim our agency. Remember that we're the masters of our tools, not the other way around.
And that means like actively cultivating the things that technology often undermines, right?
Absolutely. Face-to-face interaction, time in nature, finding purpose beyond just consuming stuff.
It's not easy, but it's crucial if we want to avoid that, dystopian future he was so worried about.
Definitely worth thinking about.
And as we wrap up this pretty intense deep dive, it's important to remember, Ted Kaczynski was more than just a criminal, a terrorist. He was a product of his time, reflecting all our anxieties, contradictions.
Even brilliant minds can get warped by trauma, by alienation.
Yeah, so his story is definitely a cautionary tale
A challenge, too, to think critically.
about our relationship with technology,
Hmm.
to create a future where it empowers us, not enslaves us.
Exactly. So what do you think? Did this deep dive change how you view technology? Let us know.
We want to hear from you.
And if you want to explore further, Kaczynski's manifesto is out there online, along with tons of articles, documentaries.
Go down the rabbit hole if you dare.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Until next time, keep diving deep.